In 2022, Sri Lanka went into an economic crisis, the worst in recent history. At that time, many Sri Lankans were seen lining up in queues for basic essentials, including cooking gas, sometimes rice, and even fuel. But 2 years later, things are now changing. The economy is starting to recover. And one key component of this recovery is the Extended Fund Facility of the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund. Now, where is Sri Lanka going with this program? What are we expecting next? To tell us more about this and to explain further, I have with me the IMF Mission Chief for Sri Lanka, Evan Papageorgiou. Evan, thank you for joining us here on News First. So I would like to start off by asking you, the fifth review of the Extended Fund Facility of the IMF is a key test for Sri Lanka. Now, when I say key test, that is because the 2026 budget is almost to be presented in Parliament. Now, what specific fiscal and structural benchmarks will determine whether Sri Lanka will secure the next tranche of this program?
Zulfick, thank you, and it's very good to be with you today. The IMF mission team is currently in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, conducting the fifth review of the Extended Fund Facility with Sri Lanka, and the team started discussions and negotiations on September 24th, and we look forward to continue engaging with the authorities. So every review, much like this one, has a backward and a forward-looking part in assessing progress and performance of the program. So in that regard, we have an opportunity to discuss a long range of issues with the government, take stock of how things have come to pass and how economic performance is doing, and then look ahead. The forward-looking part is perhaps the more important one in assessing the economic outlook and assessing also and jointly determine with the authorities the program targets and objectives and parameters. For the fifth review, we will assess, on the backward-looking part, we will assess the performance of the economy based on quantitative targets as well as some indicative targets within that. And then we will also evaluate the structural benchmarks, as we call them, that we have set for the program between June 30th and the end of the year. Some structural benchmarks to be assessed for this review include the parliamentary submission of amendments to the SDP and the Port City Acts, the SFAT repeal, which obviously has gotten a lot of attention, cost recovery, energy pricing, review of the electricity tariff methodology, customs work, and state-owned bank governance. And obviously, as you mentioned as well, Zulfick, a key component of this discussion for this review is budget 2026, where we have had strong engagement with the authorities and long discussions about how would the budget fit within the program parameters for 2026.
Evan, you touched on something very important, and my next question as well, that's the electricity tariff adjustments. Now, this has been a recurring issue. Now, IMF has already said, it has to meet the cost. It should be a cost-reflective energy pricing mechanism that needs to be implemented. Now, what are the risks that Sri Lanka would face in securing the next tranche if this price adjustment is delayed once again?
Zulfick, cost recovery, we like to call it cost recovery, but cost reflectivity is also a closely associated term. But for all intents and purposes, we mean the state where the electricity company is financially does not incur financial losses, and this principle is one of the primary building blocks of the program. Not having CEB or its successor company after the unbundling not having to incur financial losses is important because it does not become a contingent liability and it doesn't become a burden to taxpayers and everybody in Sri Lanka. Therefore, maintaining cost recovery electricity pricing is a continuous structural benchmark for us. where we consider it to be very important in containing fiscal risks, allowing the Ceylon Electricity Board or its successor company to run at a good commercial grounds and be able to provide good services to all consumers and the country and companies and industries. So this is a key part of the program. For the fifth review, we will also assess the continued structural benchmark with regards to the October tariff submission. So obviously we're looking forward to seeing the outcome of this, and we have had discussions with the authorities and the CEB as well as the regulator.
And even another component of the IMF program is good governance and also social protection reforms. And it is a repeated word or repeated phrase in every IMF statement that comes out on Sri Lanka about protecting the poor and the vulnerable. So when it comes to social protection reforms, where is the IMF assessment with regard to programs like Aswasuma? Because if I recall, Aswasuma was introduced for a certain period and it's still going on. So what is the IMF's assessment? And also, do you think Sri Lanka has the necessary funding to proceed with this program?
Zulfick, that's a very important issue. Protecting the poor and vulnerable is a very important component of this program. Is one of the several pillars of the program, and it's a co-equal importance of the program. So we want it to be a very high priority to the authorities, and this is something we always spend a lot of time discussing and arriving at a good understanding of the performance and where any additional efforts should be focused on. So the EFF program, the Extended Fund Facility program, has a floor on social spending. And that is so to ensure that the fiscal adjustment does not sacrifice support to those who need it the most, the poor and the vulnerable. In practice, this means that the government must spend a minimum amount of rupees toward social support, and this amount is assessed on a quarterly basis, every 3 months, every March, June, September and December, based on the spending that goes towards, as you mentioned, the Aswasuma and the empowerment programs. Now, at the fourth review of the program, the previous review that was, we went to the board on July 1st, the March 2025 indicative target on social spending was met, and that followed a period of near misses or misses because of slower execution. And we look forward to seeing how these indicative targets, how this spending and how these programs and how these allocations are shaping up for the June and the September quarters as well. So we are very focused on seeing more progress there. Now, you asked about the Aswasuma program itself. So this is something where we were holding discussions with the authorities on reforms aimed at strengthening and the targeting, the coverage and the adequacy of those programs. And this is a live discussion, particularly for the particularly for Aswasuma as a very important social safety net for those in need in Sri Lanka. So we think in that regard, it's important to expedite the onboarding of second round Aswasuma applicants and also launch the recertification of the first round applicants to improve coverage and reduce the inclusion-exclusion errors. So we look forward to continue more discussion with the authorities, and we will have more to say on this as well. Thank you.
So even the 2026 budget is coming up, and the IMF has also repeatedly said that there needs to be stronger revenue measures in place for Sri Lanka to recover, to overcome the crisis. Now, several measures have already been in place, and then the IMF has also mentioned that there should be prudent spending in the 2026 budget as well. Now, going forward with the existing tax reforms, what are the new tax reforms that the IMF hopes to propose and the expenditure controls that are non-negotiable if Sri Lanka is to achieve success in this program?
So under the current review and under any review, there is a discussion about all issues regarding to fiscal performance. And obviously, the time of the budget is by far the most important time to discuss these issues. So we pay close attention to the 2026 budget. We have had a lot of discussions, and we will continue engaging with the authorities on these issues. What that means in practice is that the budget has to be in line with the program parameters, which obviously includes a very important target, which is the primary fiscal surplus of 2.3% of GDP. In other words, revenues minus expenditures, not accounting for interest expenses. And this is a key requirement because it restores fiscal sustainability, which is one of the primary reasons of Sri Lanka's economic crisis. Now, on the revenue side, we will assess progress in mobilizing revenue through various avenues, not least the motor vehicle import taxes, as you have also seen for the big uptake in this year's performance, personal income tax, corporate income tax, VAT collection, and other fees, as well as non-tax revenue. On the spending side, we expect primary spending in 2026 to be consistent, obviously, with the authorities' 13% of GDP PFM Act ceiling on primary spending, which is by definition in line with program parameters. There, of course, that one number is important, 13% is important, but what goes underneath that 13% is also just as important. In other words, we have spent a lot of time and will continue discussing with the authorities on the quality of those programs. So we look forward to seeing a strong implementation, particularly with respect to the capital expenditure programs, which have been underperforming in recent years as the public investment portfolio tries to find its way of materializing properly.
So Evan, moving on to the next part of my question is, a recent IMF working paper warned about slippages in this program for Sri Lanka. And now there is a discussion going on that sometimes an election may come very soon, most likely the provincial council elections in Sri Lanka. Now, how concerned is the IMF over fiscal slippages, especially given that a country like Sri Lanka always makes populist promises or populist measures when an election is on the horizon?
So, obviously, the authorities remain committed to the program parameters and the program objectives. We have had that message in the fourth review, and we think that this is coming through now as well. Now, where we are right now in the fifth review, notwithstanding the elections, we are providing an updated assessment of the program performance, and we will judge how this is coming to be. Now, we see that Sri Lanka has done a lot of has seen a lot of good progress and a lot of commendable outcomes. Economic growth has come back strongly. First half of this year, the economy grew by 4.8% in real terms on year-on-year basis. Inflation is coming back towards target. It's back to positive territory. The currency is stable. Reserves are accumulating, and a whole host of other good indicators. So we take good note of all the good progress, including also for the accumulation of reserves by the central bank. And of course, we take note also of the government's commitment to maintaining their targets. I think what is key now is for the authorities to persevere or double down rather in their efforts to rebuild the fiscal and external buffers that they have fought so hard to gain. So, as a principle, this requires maintaining macroeconomic and financial stability, on restoring and maintaining debt sustainability, on mitigating fiscal risks from SOEs, all SOEs in Sri Lanka, including also through cost recovery for electricity, and then continuing on the path of rebuilding reserves, foreign reserves, and maintaining price stability. So my message is that the reform momentum needs to be maintained to safeguard the macroeconomic benefits that have already been realized. This is particularly important because although economic growth seems okay and we hope that it will continue, there are significant downside risks. So these buffers are not important only because they communicate some strength to the economy, but also provide insurance for any future shocks.
Right. Evan, speaking of Sri Lanka, we've had about 16 plus IMF programs throughout history. And President Anura Kumara Dissanayake has strongly emphasized that this IMF program, this particular extended fund facility by the IMF, is hopefully going to be the last supportive program that Sri Lanka gets from the IMF. Now, moving forward, from your vantage point, what conditions must be met by Sri Lanka to exit an IMF dependency program and achieve sustainable economic stability? And where do you think Sri Lanka is going forward now?
Zulfick, this is the goal. Every program is meant to do a lot of the necessary reforms for the country to stand on its own 2 feet and having strong and sustainable growth. Sri Lanka has made a lot of commendable progress on many fronts, implementing difficult but much needed reforms on a wide range of issues. And these are now bearing fruit post-crisis. So, inflation is back to being positive and coming back towards the target. Fiscal performance has been improved quite a lot, particularly with fiscal revenues coming back and being healthy and in line with program parameters. And then reserves obviously continue to accumulate and seeing broad economic stability. So this is very positive. And we continue to be very encouraged by the authorities' commitment to the rest of the current program, the 4-year EFF program. So it is critical for the authorities to sustain this reform momentum idea and these initiatives because this is the right way to safeguard the hard-won gains and the sacrifices of the people throughout this economic crisis. So the point is to put the economy on a path of a long-lasting and stable and inclusive growth. So, in other words, rebuilding the fiscal space and the external buffers are very important because this gives the way forward for many ways. So we see a strong momentum in continuing these reforms, and we will support the authorities. Even after the program, of course, we will support the authorities in a different capacity by providing good and trusted advice, as well as providing capacity development as needed. And let me just say here that the IMF remains a steadfast partner to the authorities and to the Sri Lankan people. And we would look forward for this to indeed be the last program and for the economy to continue doing well and booming and benefiting everybody.
Thank you, Evan. And in quick words, what is your message to the people of Sri Lanka?
The people of Sri Lanka have gone through a lot from the bottom of the economic crisis post-COVID, but also before that. My team and I had the chance to recently meet with some smallhold farmers in the middle of the country, in Central Province, the central government. Of course, we always meet all relevant stakeholders, including the administration here in Colombo. But for me, getting out of Colombo, seeing regular folks, it resonated with me on many levels. My message to Sri Lankans is that they have had a lot of sacrifices, but they have also seen a lot of progress. It takes a little while for all these measures to trickle down to everybody, but they will. They have a way of, economic growth will benefit everyone. But we understand that there is time needed. Reforms take time, but the way we think about them is the reforms are not just a checkbox that you need to tick off. It's a series of commitments and executions that will have long-term implications and long-term benefits for everybody. And this is why we insist that although growth is strong and doing well, this is not the time to let off and backtrack or slow down any reforms. So we want to continue seeing strong commitment, and my message to the Sri Lankan people is times are better, and they will continue being better alongside with proper execution of reforms.
Thank you so much, Evan. And those last words, it's getting better and it's going to get even more better. Some inspiring words from the IMF chief, mission chief, Evan Papageorgiou. Well, that is also our hope. Hope Sri Lanka not only goes back to where it was before the crisis arose in 2022, but to a place even better than where it was. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you, Evan, for taking your time from your busy schedule to meet with me and discuss these key issues affecting Sri Lanka as a whole and also our program forward. Thank you so much, Evan.
Thank you, Zulfick.
And we'll meet you again, once again, with another interesting interview on Sri Lanka's economy and the trajectory of moving forward.